Hi, and thank you for joining us. My name is Sivan. I'm a UA and Monetization Manager here at Mooney, which means that I'm responsible for the growth of the games. I've been working at Mooney for a year after getting my bachelor degree in neuroscience and psychology. And also I've been playing mobile games since Snake 1, so it's been a while. So our agenda here at Mooney, which is a hyper-casual publisher, is based on people and technology. It means that we strongly rely on data. We have a predictive tool which allows us to scale the game and doing it fast. And also we have a strong people-oriented approach, which means that the studio we collaborate with are getting to know not only the publishing managers, but here at Mooney they get to work with the game designers, the creative marketing, and the UA and monetization teams, which in fact is one of the things that distinguish us from other publishers. Because here at Mooney we believe that working together is the only way of achieving outstanding results. And indeed, together with people and technology, we have managed to get amazing results during the last 3 years, and we continue to pursue this goal. So in this session today, I want to talk to you about LTV, which is the lifetime value, and why it is so important for the growth of the game. So we're gonna go through the flow for publishing a game. What are the main KPIs that we are looking for when we are publishing? What is affecting our revenue, and how it helps us to scale the game. And at the end, we will go through some case studies to demonstrate the effect of how changing one parameter inside the game can affect our revenue and therefore also our LTV. But a small note before we begin. LTV is complicated. It depends on so many factors that we can't talk about all of them during the short time we have. So in this session, I will try to simplify it, and we're going to talk about the main concepts. So let's begin. So before we start talking about LTV and what it is exactly, let's view the general flow. So first, we have the prototype, which is the phase when you, and when I say you, I mean the game designers, are designing a game. So at some point after we have the prototype, you want to start test it to see which results it can bring. Now, when I'm saying results, I'm referring to 3 main metrics that we have in the industry that we are taking into account while we test the game. And of course, in later stages, also when the game is published. So the first one is CPI, which is the cost of bringing a user to play the game. Now in hyper-casual, usually we aim for a lower CPI, which is our competitive advantage against more casual games. The second metric is retention, which is how many users will return to play the game after acquiring them. For hyper-casual games, usually we have a lower retention rate in the later days, which means that our opportunity window to make revenue is shorter compared to casual games. And the third metric that we're looking for is playtime, which is the time a user plays the game. Usually we talk in seconds in the industry. Now I want you to keep in mind that the number of ads a user can see, it depends also on the playtime. Now, to understand this strong correlation between the playtime and the number of ads, we can demonstrate the effect on banners. What do I mean? So, let's say we have a timer for banner which is set to change every 25 seconds. So, if a player will play 50 seconds, it means that he will watch 2 banners. Now, if a player will play 100 seconds, he will watch 4 banners. The same goes for a different timer. Let's say we set the timer for 18 seconds for each banner. So it means that if a player will play for 50 seconds, he will watch 3 ads. So basically, the more time the user will play the game, the more ads he will eventually see. Now, in hyper-casual, the majority of revenue is coming from ads. So as you can guess, we need a decent amount of user playtime in order to be profitable. Now, once we have all those three metrics, and they are according to our what we are looking for, we can publish our game. So now let's say that we have published a game and we want to generate profit. Now, first, before we can generate profit, we need to generate revenue. So how does it happen? As I just mentioned, the longer the playtime, the more opportunities a user have to watch ads. Now, the number of ads has a strong correlation to the revenue. So we can assume that if he watches more ads, also it will generate more revenue. So you're probably asking how come. So in order to understand it more clearly, let's think of the following example. Let's say we have one user that downloaded our game. Now, day 0, it's the day of the download. So let's say on day 0, a user plays 1,000 seconds and he watches 14 ads from all ad placement. I mean, interstitial, rewarded, and banners. And he generated a daily revenue of 10 cents. Now, the next day, which is day 1, the day after the download, our user played for 1,200 seconds. So in total, let's say he watched 18 ads and generated a daily revenue of 20 cents. Now, we know that our user played for 7 days in total. It means that he played day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, 5, 6, and that's it. So, in those 7 days, the user generated a total of $1.30 in revenue. So, now that we know how many days the user played and what is the total revenue that he generated us, we can sum up the total revenue for each day, and this is basically our LTV, the lifetime value of the user. Now, when we are publishing, we wish to have, of course, more than one user in our game. So the LTV is calculated based on the average revenue for all users. So each game has a different LTV. Why is that? Because, as I mentioned before, the LTV relies on the playtime and retention, which is different between different games. So also we cannot expect the same LTV in 2 different games. Okay, now that we have a better understanding of the parameters that affect the revenue, we can go ahead and review the composition of the LTV. So our LTV is basically have 5 components that affecting it. The first one is retention. As you already know, the longer the retention, the longer opportunity window we have to generate revenue and profit from those users. For an example, let's say we have a day 0 retention of 100%. It means that the day after the download, all the 100 users we acquired the day before return to the game. Now, let's say that we have a day 2 retention rate of 0%, and after that our users didn't come back to the game. It means that they played only day 0 and day 1. So in this case, it means that we need to return their investment in acquiring them in 2 days only. Now, the second thing that a component that affects our LTV is the playtime. As I mentioned before, the longer the playtime, the more opportunities a user have to watch ads. And as we see, the more ads, the higher the revenue, and we all want a higher revenue. So now the third one, as you can see, it's the number of ads, which, as I just explained a minute before, it is also related to playtime. But not just the playtime. the number of ads is also connected to the structure of the game, which is very important. What do I mean? The number of rewarded interstitial and banners that we have in the game are also affecting our LTV. For example, let's say we can have a gameplay of one stage that lasts 2 minutes, that have one interstitial, and on the other hand, we can have also a gameplay of 1 minute. A gameplay of one level, which is also 2 minutes, but has one interstitial and one rewarded placement. So the revenue will generate will be different. Now, the fourth component that affects our LTV is ECPM, which is the price we are getting for showing ads in our game. The ECPM is related to the demand, which is the ones that show ads in our game. But it also related to what's going on in the market for different times in the year. So it's trickier to control or to improve it. Now, the fifth component is in-app purchases, which have a different effect on the LTV, and it depends on the game itself, on the operating system, if it's Android, if it's iOS, and on the country. So also, it's something that changes between one game itself. And the last component is the organic users, which is the users that download the game, but without us acquiring them. Now, the more we engage, usually in the UA activity, so the more organic users we have. They do affect each other. And because the organic users is users that were not spending money for their acquisition, it means that the revenue that they are generating, we can afford for more UA activity, and basically it helps us to scale the game. Now, the organic users, they behave a bit differently than the users that we acquire, so they have a different effect on the LTV. So where I'm talking about today on LTV, we will talk about the components, but without taking into account the organic users. So all of these components are affecting our revenue, and thereby also our LTV. And later on, through our case studies, we'll see how changing one of those parameters can affect actually increase the lifetime value. Okay, so here in this graph, you can see how the lifetime value affects the growth of the game. Now, the LTV, which is the total revenue that we're expecting to generate on average from a single user throughout the whole period of time that they play the game. And on the other hand, we have the CPI, which is the price we pay on average for each user we acquire. Now, the relation between them, and without taking into account the revenue from the organic users, in order to simplify the example. So we can see on the left side of the graph that we have the LTV, which is lower than the CPI, which means that the income we'll generate from each user will be lower than the price for acquiring them. That means that it will be harder for us to increase the scale of the game without losing some more money. In the middle, you can see the break-even point, which means that we returned exactly the amount that we spent on acquiring those users. And in the right side, you can see a situation when the LTV is actually higher than our CPI. That is the best income we can wish for, and it means that we're returning the money we invested in the UA, the user acquisition, and we can continue to invest this money in more UA activity. Now, we use this also when we are testing a game. What do I mean? If we see that in the testing phase, the LTV is lower than the CPI, it means that this game probably don't have potential to succeed, and probably we won't publish it. Now, in this table, you can see the relationship between LTV and retention. In the columns, we see the days. We have day 0, day 1, day 2, and day n, which day n is referring to the last day the users play the game. It can be after 14 days, it can be 21 days, it can be 30 days, and it can be even more. But it means that this is the last day that a user played. After that day, we don't have users anymore. So, in the lines, we have the retention baseline and the retention after each one of the iterations. Below the retention rates, we have the accumulated revenue, which means what is the revenue that we generated until a specific day for that retention rate. So, for example, we can see that each change in the retention rate from each iteration had also changed the accumulated revenue, which means that in the end it also affected our LTV. So the first iteration, which increased day 2 and day n retention, in total increased the LTV by 5%. And if you're looking on the second iteration, which increased day 1, day 2, and day n retention, but it increased our LTV only by 3%. So when we're iterating a game, if it's for testing or while publishing, the game is published, when we're iterating a game, we want the published version to be the one which extends our LTV the most. So in this case, we will go with the first iteration and not the second one. Now, so now that we have a better understanding, which I hope you do, of the meaning of LTV and the parameters that can affect it, I want to show you a few case studies from a couple of games that we published during the last year to demonstrate these effects. So the first case study I want to share with you is for a game we published in December. We started with a UA-oriented strategy, and then we decided to explore more options to scale the game. So we opened a campaign in Indonesia. We saw it explode with more than 5K users a day, and according to that also our organic users really increased. And so we saw these crazy numbers, we analyzed the data and decided to do a test on the monetization side, which means that one of the things that we found out is that the eCPM that we are getting in our tiered waterfall was different from the eCPM that we could get if we take Indonesia and build a separate waterfall tailored just for it. So probably now you're asking me, what is a waterfall? So in the short answer will be that it's our way of selling the ad inventory that we have in our game for others to show their ads. So usually the waterfall structure is by tiers, which each tier is grouped up by a similar eCPM in different countries. But because of the premium traffic that we got for Indonesia, we decided it is worth the hassle, which is a lot of work, to create and optimize a separate waterfall. So we decided to build a unique waterfall just for it. And we saw the good results from building a separate waterfall in rewarded and interstitials, and also banners. But here for this example, to simplify it and not overwhelm you with too much data, we're going to see the eCPM for banners only. Because in this game, banners are generating 30% of the revenue. We found it easier to show you the example through banners. So here you can see that the dedicated waterfall increased the average eCPM. In the first week, the eCPM increased in 50% And then after 2 weeks, the eCPM increased by 42%. 4 weeks after we changed it, the CPM increased by 50%. And by the time we got to 11 weeks after the change, the CPM increased in 150%, which is absolutely crazy. And if we calculate the total increase in eCPM just for banners, we managed to increase it by 200% in banners only, which eventually generated an increase of 25% in the LTV for Indonesia. So for this reason, we usually recommend people that engaged in UI activity or you as developers to always be on top of the data to see if there's any specific country with a potential to scale the game. And the more granular data you can get, the more granular you can get with your campaign targeting and optimization, like we did in this case. So the second case study I want to share with you is a case study from a game we published 2 months ago on March called Clean It All, which is a hybrid casual game. It had fine initial metrics, but after we published it, we saw the potential of iterating the game and increasing the playtime and the retention, which we know would help us to scale the game. So our game designers, together with the developers, decided about the iterations, and in the latest iteration, they indeed managed to increase the retention and the playtime, which also led to an effect on the average revenue per user. So in this graph, you can see that the increase in the playtime increased the average revenue. We can see that we increased the playtime by 12%, and according to that, it increased our average revenue per 80 by 28%. The reason that I'm talking here about the average revenue per user and not the LTV, it's because we're talking about a short period of time. If I were talking about like, let's say 30 days maybe, so I could talk about LTV, but in this graph we see 14 days only, so it's average revenue per user. But we know if we will sum up all the average revenue per user for all the days that for all the users and all the days that they played, we will get our LTV. So here in this game specifically, a relatively small increase in playtime, which was 260 seconds on average, had led to an increase of 28% in the average revenue per user, which is a lot. And also in this example, I'm showing you, as the previous one, only the revenue for banners. So imagine how it affected the whole game, along with the revenue generated from the rewarded and interstitial video. So I think this example really shows us how the increase in playtime and a relative small increase can have a big effect on the revenue we're generating, and therefore also for the LTV. We know it related to the number of ads that a user can see. As I mentioned before, the longer the playtime, the more opportunities a user have to watch more ads, and more ads means a higher revenue for us. Okay, now the third example for case study I want to show you. It's from a game that we haven't published yet. I'm going to do here something quite unique. So I can't tell you the name of the game, but I can give you a small hint that it has some spidery theme going on. So here, in this example, for the game that I cannot say its name, we will review the correlation between the retention and the LTV. This game is an excellent example of how increasing the retention can influence our revenue. This game We started to test 2 months ago, if I'm not wrong. And with the initial build, we saw the performance in terms of retention and playtime were quite low, but we believe that this game has potential and decided to go into iterations to try to improve the retention and the playtime. And indeed, after doing one iteration, we managed to increase day one retention, so it became more similar to the rates we see in other games in this genre. And basically the decision to go into iterations gave us the opportunity to increase the game metrics and therefore increase our revenue and LTV and extend the growth potential for this game. As we know, better retention and playtime can lead to a higher revenue. So after doing one additional iteration, we managed to increase also the retention for day one and day two. But we decided not to publish yet because we weren't satisfied with the metrics. So after that, we decided to go into another iteration before publishing the game. So on the third iteration, we increased the day one playtime. It gave us another boost to the game potential. So now we are publishing it soon. So here in this graph, you can see how the increase in the retention for day one, for day two, sorry, in this graph it's day two, how the retention for day two affected also our average revenue per user. Again, the reason that I'm using here average revenue per user and then not LTV, it's because the short period of time that we're talking about. So here we can see that increasing the day two retention by 25% affected our average revenue per user and increased it by 18%. Also here, the effect that is shown on the revenue is for banners only. Again, we saw also the increase in rewarded and interstitials, but we're showing you the results only for banners in order to simplify a bit this example. So even though this game is not published yet, we know that the increase in the average revenue per user will increase our LTV for this game and will allow us to scale it more faster, which is always something that we're looking for. So basically, in the all of this case study, I wanted to show you how changing one parameter in the game, it might be the retention, it might be the playtime, it might be controlling or trying to control the CPM through the monetization side, how changing each one of them can really affect and improve our revenue and therefore also our LTV. So I hope you enjoyed and I hope this was informative for you. And if you have any questions, then I would love to answer. So thank you for joining us.